Shanquella Brenda Robinson was born on January 9, 1997, to parents Bernard and Salamandra. After graduating from West Charlotte High School, she earned a degree from Winston-Salem State University. She then opened the Exquisite Kids Hair Salon and the Exquisite Boutique, which sold women's clothes. In late October of 2022, 25-year-old Shanquella, along with 6 friends, left Charlotte and headed for Cabo, Mexico, where they planned to celebrate one of their birthdays. On October 28th, they arrived at the Fundadoras Beach Club. Sadly, within 24 hours, Shanquella would be dead. The following day, authorities received a call about an unconscious woman in one of the resort rooms. The caller said the woman had an accident and needed help. A doctor from the nearby American Medical Center arrived at 3:15 p.m. and discovered that the woman was Shanquella. Her friends told the medic that Shanquella had consumed an excessive amount of alcohol. The doctor noted that Shanquella was unable to communicate verbally and did appear intoxicated. The doctor also noted that Shanquella's vital signs were stable, but she was having trouble breathing and her pulse was quite low. With no other options, the doctor recommended that she be transferred to the nearby hospital, but strangely, the friends disagreed and wanted her to remain at the resort. The friends got their way. However, at 4:20 p.m., 55 minutes after the doctor initially arrived, Shanquella suffered a seizure. She was then rushed to the hospital. Sadly, doctors spent the next hour trying to save her life, but their attempts were unsuccessful, and she was pronounced dead at 5:57 p.m. Even though her friends insisted she died from alcohol poisoning, her death certificate listed the cause of death as severe spinal cord injury and atlas luxation. After her death, her friends brought her suitcase back to her parents in North Carolina and stuck with their story that she had died of alcohol poisoning after a day of heavy drinking. However, 3 weeks later, everything would change when a video was posted online that showed a physical altercation inside a room at the resort between Shanquella and another person. The clip shows her alleged friend, Deonjanae Jackson, attacking a completely naked Shanquella, ultimately knocking her to the ground. She then continues to punch and kick her. The man filming and others in the room did nothing to stop the attack, and the man could be heard saying to Shanquella, and I quote, "At least fight back, something." While U.S. authorities have refused to charge anyone in Shanquella's death, on November 23rd, prosecutors in Mexico issued an arrest warrant for Jackson. She was also one of the 3 girls who brought Shanquella's luggage back to her parents. The FBI has said they won't prosecute because the alleged crime was committed outside their jurisdiction, and they will need an invitation from Mexico to assist. Jackson had been Shanquella's friend for about 5 years and even traveled with the Robinson family on vacations. After the autopsy was released, Jackson had her phone number disconnected along with some of the other friends. Unfortunately, it's now been over a year and a half since Shanquella was likely beaten to death, and as of July 2024, this case remains unsolved. Kelly Marie Lynch was born in Northern Ireland on September 16, 2000, to Sean and Julianne. During her early life, her family moved to Portsmouth, United Kingdom, but when she started school, they moved back to Linoski. Kelly was described as a very happy person, especially when she was with her family. She had a very unique sense of style and loved wearing wild makeup. She also enjoyed the supernatural and the TV show The Vampire Diaries. She was doing very well and had a lot of aspirations until her life was sadly cut short the day before St. Patrick's Day 2024. On March 13, 2024, 23-year-old Kelly left home to visit friends over an hour away in Monaghan Town. 2 days later, on Friday, March 15th, she spoke to her mother, Julianne, around 8 p.m. Sadly, that was the last time she would ever speak to her daughter. By the following morning, Kelly was nowhere to be found, but strangely, none of her friends reported her missing. 24 hours later, around 8:30 a.m. on Sunday, her body was found under a bridge in shallow water in the Ulster Canal. They determined she had been dead since the early morning hours of March 16th. Unfortunately, very little investigative work was done. Allegedly, all they did was close the bridge for about 10 minutes to recover her remains. Afterward, they transported them over an hour away to the mortuary at Our Lady's Hospital in Navan, a town in County Meath, Ireland. They originally said she died from a head injury, but later changed it to drowning. She still had her phone wrapped in her hand when she was found. Kelly also had multiple injuries, including broken ribs and jaw, black knuckle marks on her neck, and wounds to her hands. A few days after her death, an unknown individual mysteriously dropped her backpack off at the police station. If things weren't already bad enough, the mortuary assistant called Julianne and informed her over the phone about her daughter's death. At the time, she had stopped to get gas, and her 12-year-old daughter unfortunately overheard the horrible news. Julianne felt that being given the news over the phone was extremely insensitive and filed a complaint with the police. She has since said she believes her daughter was involved in some sort of altercation and didn't enter the canal on her own. However, investigators believe she fell, banged her head, which ultimately knocked her unconscious, and then drowned in the shallow water. When Julianne went to pick up Kelly's belongings, investigators said that her clothes were tested for fibers and DNA. Interestingly, all of her clothes were extremely dirty and covered in mud, except for her black Converse trainers. They were in pristine condition, except for a tiny speck of blood. When Julianne picked up the clothes, police said she was welcome to have them tested by an independent lab. Because police didn't treat her death as suspicious, they never obtained surveillance footage, and it has since been overwritten. Julianne says that she is willing to accept their theory, but wants them to prove it to her, which they have not done, and as of July 2024, this case remains unsolved. In September of 1992, 33-year-old Shelia Faye Bradford, a mother of 3, was divorced from Jackie Bradford after 14 years of marriage and living in Camden, Tennessee. After her divorce, she met a man named J.C. Bruce, and the two began dating. Unfortunately, J.C. and his family were known criminals in the area, and he had even been convicted of abducting and sexually assaulting a teenage girl before they met. Close to 2 years ago, in January 1991, J.C. and his 3 brothers became the prime suspects in the murders of Danny Vine and his fiancée, Della Thornton. Danny was a mussel shell buyer and harvester, and whoever murdered him and his fiancée stole his truckload of shells. Danny was a professional scuba diver and would harvest the mussels from the Tennessee River and buy shells from other divers. He would then sell the mussels to be used to manufacture mother of pearl. Another mussel buyer said that if the truckload of shells were from the river, they would be worth around $3,000, but if they were lake shells, they would have been worth $30,000. After Danny and Della were murdered, their house was set on fire. Investigators originally believed the motive for their murders was revenge and robbery. They were having trouble solving the case until they were contacted by Shelia in September of 1992. On September 18th, she and her 15-year-old daughter Christy met TBI Special Agent Alvin Daniel and Benton County Sheriff Billy Wyatt at the Country and Western Steakhouse to discuss what she knew. Unfortunately, someone involved in the murders figured out what she was doing, and during the meeting, they exploded one of the outbuildings of the restaurant. The meeting was then cut short, and while Shelia had told them that 3 or 4 individuals were involved, she never got around to providing names. The moment the explosion occurred, she threw her daughter to the floor and said, "He knows we're here, we must leave." She sent Christy back to her father, Jackie's home, and she went to stay with her sister. Even though the TBI knew she was likely in danger, they didn't offer her any protection that day. It wasn't until she refused to testify that they ordered to put her in the federal witness program, but sadly, she would never get the chance. 2 days later, on September 21st, 1992, at around 10:30 a.m., Shelia strangely vanished. That morning, she left her sister's home and returned to her house to pick up some clothes and do some laundry. She was last seen on Little Jim Road in Camden between 8:30 and 10 a.m. Her car was then found back at her sister's home with the keys still in the ignition. Some thought she might have fled the state, but all her clothes, shoes, and $700 in cash that she planned to deposit at the bank were left behind when she vanished. Finally, in November of 1993, JC's three brothers, Gary Charles Bruce, Robert H. Bruce, and Jerry Lee Bruce, along with their neighbor, David Riles, were indicted for Danny and Della's murders. Even their mother, Mary Kathleen Bruce Rion, was arrested and charged with perjury and obstruction of justice. The brothers figured Danny would be an easy target since his Muscle Shell camp was secluded in the woods. On the day of the murder, they bought several cans of gas from a local gas station and then headed to the camp. Once there, they tied Danny and Della up and then shot them both at point-blank range. Gary shot Danny while Jerry shot Della. They then poured the gasoline on the bodies and threw out the house and set it on fire. Afterward, they fled the scene along with the truck full of mussels. They even left Danny and Della's new puppy in the house while it burned. Sadly, it didn't survive. On July 27, 1994, Gary escaped prison and remained at large for 14 months before finally being caught. In the end, the three brothers, along with David Riles, were convicted of the murders and sentenced to life in prison without parole. Their mother, Mary, was also convicted and sentenced to 97 months in prison. While they suspect JC was involved, he has never been charged. However, he was found guilty in 1993 on federal weapons charges and was convicted in 2000 for assault. He was arrested again in 2015 for poaching. To this day, her family believes he abducted and murdered Shelia to try and keep his own family out of prison. Sadly, as of July 2024, Shelia has never been found, and this case remains unsolved. Erin Brooks, who is a member of the St. Mary's First Nation Indigenous community in New Brunswick, Canada, had her first child when she was 17 years old. She was described as a fun, outspoken, and family-oriented individual. By the age of 38, she was the mother of 4, living with her husband, Chris Fowler. On December 27, 2021, at about 9 p.m., Erin was caught on surveillance footage inside St. Mary's Smoke Shop in New Brunswick's capital, Fredericton. After buying some cigarettes and leaving, she was never seen again. By early 2022, Fredericton police began to suspect that her disappearance involved foul play. The community has rallied around her family in hopes of finding answers, but all efforts have turned up nothing. Interestingly, in 2018, 3 years before she disappeared, due to all the missing and murdered Indigenous women, she posted the following message: "I am a strong Maliseet woman. I am content. If there ever comes a time where I disappear, where I go for groceries and do not return, where I go to run errands and do not return, please know that I did not voluntarily leave my family. I am not out partying. I did not go and commit somewhere. If I do not return home, know that someone took me against my will or worse. Do not make excuses as to why I may not have returned home, because it is a lie. Look for me, please." I cannot confirm the next bit of information, but I want to mention it anyway. On the Fredericton subreddit, someone posted that Erin has witnessed a murder on Paul Street and was murdered because of it. Paul Street is right around the corner from the smoke shop. Investigators have not publicly released this information, so I'm unsure if it's true or not. Sadly, there is very little information in this case, and as of July 2024, she has not been found, and this case remains unsolved. Cassandra Elizabeth Durham was born to James Michael and Linda Ray Durham in Fayette County, Kentucky on September 19, 1967, and went by Cassie. She grew up in Lexington, Kentucky, and graduated from Henry Clay High School. By the late summer of 1987, 19-year-old Cassie was living in Baltimore, Maryland with her boyfriend. That August, they left their home to travel to Roscommon, Michigan to visit her boyfriend's grandfather. Once there, she called and had a conversation with her father, James Durham, but after hanging up, he sadly never heard from her again. When the boyfriend finally returned sometime in 1988 or 1989, Cassie was strangely not with him and has never been heard from again. Unfortunately, there are very few details in her case. She does, however, have 2 tattoos on her hip and thigh area. One tattoo has her boyfriend's initials, EB, while the other has the initials of her college sorority. If she is still alive, she would be 56 years old, but sadly, she has never been found, and as of July 2024, this case remains unsolved.